Good afternoon. Getting right down to business here. We're doing it live, doing more at 4, weekday afternoons, right after Guy Benson at 3, and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. And stay tuned tonight at 6 for Winning with WINANS. Top-ranked money manager Ken Winans will be joining me again tonight at 6 o'clock, and he'll be joining us shortly to discuss today's big market action. Right now, it's Mottek On Money, live on the air on 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at KBC.com, and your on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, KBC.com, Apple iTunes, YouTube, all of your favorite podcast platforms. Stocks moving sharply higher today, kicking off the new week as trade tensions ease after the U.S. and China agree to cut tariffs, temporarily at least. Few sectors, though, in which consumers could still feel the pain of higher tariffs longer term. The lower tariffs announced today by the U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent in Geneva, Switzerland, did not include those on automobile, steel, or aluminum from China. President Trump said potential tariffs on drugs from China are still in play as the U.S. tries to bring the pharmaceutical businesses back to the United States. That was another big part of the story today. Bank stocks did rally today among the stocks that participated amid optimism around the U.S.-China tariff discussions. The sector has now gained back all of its losses that followed the president's Liberation Day tariff announcement. Also, the Magnificent Seven had a big day, adding more than $830 billion in market cap after the U.S. and China agreed to roll back tariffs on each other for 90 days. Under that trade deal, by the way, the U.S. will cut tariffs on Chinese products from 145% to 30%, while China will reduce tariffs on the U.S. from 125% to 10% for 90 days. Boeing moving to the highs we've seen in more than a year today as the trade deal boosted hopes for more plane orders and deliveries. We saw Boeing stock move nicely higher today, up nearly $4 at 98 and change. And Tesla also participating in the rally, up 7%. Double-digit gains for the month for Tesla, GM, Stellantis, and Ford also moving higher among the automakers. Gold, though, did pull back today. In fact, saw a drop of about 3% on the trade tensions easing. We saw gold right now hovered around $3,240 an ounce. Coinbase Global, among the crypto names in the spotlight today, that stock will be joining the S&P 500 next Monday. So Coinbase shot higher today by about 8% in after-hours trading. Coinbase moved up about $8 to $207 and change at the close today. We've seen a pretty decent rebound in the cryptos here, with Bitcoin moving back to around 105,000 and then pulling back now to just shy of $103,000. We'll be talking more about crypto here momentarily. The dollar and treasury yields climbed. Oil did move higher as well. Oil at the moment is around just below $62 a barrel. The volatility index, the VIX index today, pulling back 16%. We'll get a new reading on inflation tomorrow. The April Consumer Price Index will be coming out tomorrow, followed by retail sales and the Producer Price Index. And joining us live now on Your Money, the markets, the economy, and the whole works, Ken Winans, top-ranked money manager Ken Winans, President and Chief Investment Officer at Winans Investments, which you can find at winansinvestments.com. Ken Winans is also a market historian, author of numerous books, his latest, Investment Atlas 3, also Forbes magazine contributor, and he has his crypto credentials too. Most importantly, he's host of Winning with Winans, heard every Monday night at 6 p.m. on your favorite station, 790 KBC, and it's always great to speak with you. Ken Winans, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Frank, and I'll throw a couple more statistics in there that have a lot of people in my business very happy. The S&P, and this is getting a little techie here, and I apologize, but the S&P 500 and the Dow Industrial Average both moved above their 200-day moving averages. In the technical world, that is a big deal. The machines, the quantitative generated trading machines all get very happy when that happens. So that was good. And then the other thing, too, just the general breadth of the market. What I mean by that is when you're looking at the highs and lows of the day, now you mentioned, certainly Magnificent Seven had a good day today, but the real shock was the best performing stocks that I tracked today were the transportation stocks. Old Dominion Freight was up 12% today, Frank. So there's a lot of hope there. It's been interesting reading certainly you and I know there's many different ways to see things, but believe it or not, there are people in the financial press that somehow think China beat us on what happened today. And you scratch your head going, how is it that China won on this deal? But whatever it is, The market's liked it. Everybody seems to be pulling the same way right now. But I would bring up that just, with all the giddiness and the excitement, I would be very, very cautious about, as you mentioned, the big numbers coming out tomorrow. I would watch those very closely. Inflation reports have a way of really killing a rally. And then also, too, you just have to bring up, we're a long way from this being over. The summertime blues can hit the market pretty good. Earnings, remember, we still don't have any guidance on earnings. There's just a lot of things still out there that makes you not want to buy things that have gone too fast, too far.
All right, and it looks like some of the major averages have seen a dramatic turnaround following that correction, and then even bear market in some cases here. Where do you see things go from here?
I've been saying for a while, and I listen, we all would love to see new highs, my friend. We all love it. Right now, we are about 6% off of the S&P 500's high. I think it's safe to say that is what we would call resistance. That's 6148. The Dow would be over 45,000. The NASDAQ, both 100 and regular NASDAQ, they've got a ways to go as well. So I think, although we're very, very happy, we all are, that we're way off the lows from a month and a half ago. But again, I would just caution everybody, it's still a stock picker's market. Certain stocks will do better than others in this market. And I still think that overall momentum, which is, we're certainly not going to have what we had the last 2 years of just, you can buy almost anything and watch it go up. This still requires very, very patient. Don't chase. Look for stocks that are doing well. You mentioned earlier today that gold pulled back, utilities pulled back. That's not a surprise. They both have had these tremendous runs. So again, just be a patient investor. Don't feel like you're going to have to rush in tomorrow.
On the Air Live with Ken Winans, you also have your crypto credentials, and certainly it's hard to ignore the big jump we've seen in some of these crypto names, including Bitcoin, by the way, which is hovering just below 103,000 here at last check. Ethereum has come to life in a big way, just shy of 2,500. Isn't that something? And Doge is back to 23 cents. Give us your thoughts here on these big moves.
And I'd also say, too, you're going to have to throw in the big three now, Solana. When you start having, commodity futures trading on you, you need to pay attention to all three, I think. Frank, it's like everything else. I think everybody's getting go fever, thinking that now that we've cleared some of these other hurdles, that the focus can go back to the basically allowing the central banks of the world to hold crypto, certainly with what Arizona's doing. There's hope that the other 49 states will follow suit. There's rumors that other third world countries are going to take El Salvador's route, and they're going to begin to use crypto as their base currency. So these are all positives, but I think it's the same thing, Frank. Again, it's fine to say you want a position in it, but where were you 2 months ago when things were getting hit? People were running scared. They didn't want to touch these things. So I think the danger, I would just say for anybody, whether it's a crypto trader, a stock trader, somebody who trades commodities, there's a phrase in my business called getting whipsawed, which means buying the high and selling the lows. Don't fall into that trap this year. Pick your points where you want in, pick the position size you want, and stay fast on that. And for people who are more sophisticated, by all means, I would look at using limit orders, which is a way to have an order to buy something at a set price that you can have out there for the future. But no, I think it's pretty astounding. We've seen the bounce. It's funny, you talked about Ethereum. It's still the wild child of crypto. A lot of us are still absolutely scratching our head on the decoupling it had last year, and it just absolutely was, basically obliterated. So again, I think there's still some of that. But other thing, the fact you talked about Coinbase, I still think for the average stock investor who wants to play crypto, that is the exchange for crypto. The fact it's being added to the S&P 500 gives you some buyers coming in all the time for it. I still think that's a safer way than for a lot of people just trying to buy, their own cryptos themselves that they really don't know what they're doing.
All right, I'm looking at Solana now, of 40% this year, and up nearly $2 now, 174 and change. So we will keep an eye on Solana, and now there's a talk about new ETFs on the horizon come June, possibly. I think the SEC is still deciding what to do about some of these new ETF choices, but in the past, certainly that has given whatever a boost, right? Once ETFs have become available for whatever coin. What do you see ahead?
I think, well, now that we've entered an era of deregulation, and, look, I know that scares some people because it brings back memories of 2008, 2009, or certainly the 1987 crash. I wouldn't fear deregulation. What I would fear is deregulation in the worst areas. But if you get rid of what many people, including me, saw as needless, being in the way of things when you didn't fully understand what you were talking about, which is what we had in the old Biden era. Now that we have a president who has his own meme coins, that changes everything. The bottom line is I think the SEC and the various state regulators have a lot more comfort in allowing these things to go through because they know they're not going to get brandished hard. But one other quick thing about that, you got to look at who the sponsors are on the ETF, Frank. If it's a small company, they might not have the bandwidth to carry it forward. But I'm excited about these new ETFs and also some of the new ETFs that are being proposed in the commodity space. Anything that helps broaden the ability of investors to get into areas, I'm all in favor of, but people do need to talk to their advisors before buying a brand new ETF and not really understanding the entire process.
On the air live with Ken Winans in a day in which we've seen the Dow close up nearly 1,200 points at 42,410. The S&P 500 popped nearly 200 at 5,844. And the NASDAQ up nearly 800 points today, 18,709. The yield in the 10-year note also noteworthy here, up to 4.47%. A jump in bond yields here, Ken. And for a while there was a lot of talk about a refi boom coming with that yield in the 10-year, which impacts fixed-rate mortgage rates coming down. But now it's popped back up. What do you see ahead on the bond front?
It's funny. I'm in the process right now of dealing with settling an estate, and we're dealing with, a house being sold and all these other things. And I literally told the realtor, I said, look, we will consider the possibility of carrying paper. That's an old, in other words, carrying a second trust deed on a property. I think basically sellers are going to need to get creative, especially in really expensive markets like Southern California. Again, you just have to work with the buyers. But I think here's the thing that we're seeing, Frank, is that the banks themselves and the mortgage companies and the mortgage REITs, they're getting more comfortable with the idea that, let's lighten certain restrictions on borrowers and let the market just basically heal. I see more of that. I see more of a willingness to work with basically a buyer who might be just a young family who has a really good credit score, but maybe they're a little light on some things. I see more of that now, and I think, again, with deregulation, when the banks are not going to get punished as they did hard the last time we had a mortgage meltdown, I think you're going to see a recovery even if rates don't come down that much. But Frank, real quick, we can't really end the interview today without talking about healthcare. What came out last night was a bombshell that hit the healthcare sector with President Trump's new executive order. I know that certainly I have some healthcare stocks. When you start laying out those kind of rules on massive price reductions, it's going to cause some problems in the short term. So I think anybody out there with big healthcare exposure, you're going to need to talk to your advisors. Now's not the time to be brave in an area that clearly is being under scrutiny with DOGE and certainly with the government, with the president himself wanting to drop prices. So that you just can't turn your back on that.
The president signed the order to reduce drug prices. It remains to be seen exactly how all of this is going to work. But what is your initial reaction from an investment standpoint on the pharmaceutical names here?
Well, I'm just looking in the, the red tells you all you need to know. And when I see stocks like Lilly, down 16% in the month, there's a lot of other niche names. Even one of my favorites companies was McKesson. But again, it's a reshuffling of the drug industry. And by the way, Frank, I'm not being yay or nay on what the president wants to try to do. We all know that we have some serious problems in our healthcare system. But the point is, as an investor, you've got to be aware that these stocks are under severe pressure. And it's just, you want to be careful about, having too much exposure in this kind of market. You want to be nimble and you want to try to adjust accordingly. So I just think that, some people might see these as bargains. I'm not that brave. I would rather wait and see what else comes out. But the other quick thing I'll bring out, we all think we're done with earnings season. We are not. Several of the retail stocks started posting their numbers. one in particular, Murphy's, which is a convenience type store, just got slaughtered. So again, if you miss your numbers, I don't care what you're in, you're going to have a very tough time of it. So again, you don't want to turn your back on that. But Frank, I think we should take today's action as maybe not the end of the volatility, but as Winston Churchill said, the beginning of the end of the volatility. So I think that people, if you have too much cash sitting on the sidelines, be careful not to be caught with that because you're afraid that we're going to be testing those old lows. That's probably not going to happen. However, as I said earlier, be careful about chasing out of a panic buying. Whipsawing is just not the way to do this.
All right, Tesla has seen quite a rebound after that earnings call with Elon Musk is saying he's going to be stepping away from the government and concentrating on Tesla again. Since then, we've seen Tesla drive sharply higher, of another $20 today at 318 and change. Quite an impressive rebound. What about Tesla here?
You know, I think it's going to be interesting with Tesla. I mean, obviously, they are the predominant automotive EV company in this country, and the focus is on bringing manufacturing back to the United States, and Tesla is a prime example of how to do that. I think the fact that we've depoliticized Tesla with, as you said, Elon Musk is going back to running the company, but it's still very much involved with the Doge group. But again, the focus isn't there. I mean, basically you have the protesters are shifting their movement away from things, and as we very quickly found out, a lot of these people, they're being arrested, and from what I understand, they're still holding pat on those 20-year jail terms. So again, Tesla is being depoliticized, and I think that's good as an investor. Here's the thing.
Actor Michael Rosenbaum, he knows some of the most talented people in the business.
Will Wheaton is here.
I'm getting ready to do this podcast. I text my Star Trek family. That is a supernatural impulse.
If you're here for Jay Moore, you found the right place. Have you always had a large personality?
The nicest way anybody's ever put it. You always warn people out.
From Twilight, Ashley Green.
We were just like, no one's going to see this. This is not going to be a good movie.
I really love the movies.
Don't feel bad.
The Inside of You podcast. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
I still want to see with what came out of Congress 2 weeks ago about they're not going to enforce EV mandates at the state level. I think that tells you all you need to know that, any of the big pie in the sky stuff with EVs maybe is not out there. The criticism I continue to hear about Tesla is that the models are aging. They need to come up with new designs. We'll have to see how that plays out.
All right, and you mentioned the shipping names in focus. Obviously, there was a lot of concern about the port activity here at the ports of L.A. and Long Beach, pretty much grinding to a halt, a de facto embargo because of the tariff concerns. But now it looks like that has now lifted. So what about some of the shipping names before we let you off the hook here?
Well, I think for a long time. These are some really good names. Companies like Old Dominion, J.B. Hunt. You just have to look at. They've been around a very long time. They're well-run companies. They happen to get blindsided with what was going on here. For people who want to have transportation, I might also want to throw in there the railroads. CVX, Union Pacific. By all means, look at some of these companies if you're inclined to want to buy those. But Frank, I think we have to be cautionary that not all is fine and dandy in trade world. This is still going to be a long-term fight. It could very easily, over 90 days, find that, hey, it doesn't work out with China and tariffs go back on. That's the kind of world we're in right now. But getting back to your point on transportation, some of these stocks have some amazing dividends. So if you're a dividend investor, if you're kind of like old Warren Buffett and you like these kind of names, you might want to take a good hard look at them. Again, they're fine. They are going to be fine as we come out of this tariff situation.
All right, and then the other specific places where you are putting money now and or taking it off the table.
I'm going to, as you know, Frank, I don't necessarily have favorites, but I just don't think you can deny that of everything that's going on right now. The whole thing with the financials, the deregulation, the fact we're having the tax, it looks like the tax package will go through sooner than expected through Congress. And I'm looking at the powerful rally today that you had in J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs. And I still am amazed how many people just, for some strange reason, they way over allocate toward tech and they under allocate toward financials. Those kind of investors have got to rethink their thinking. And I think if you don't buy these financials at these kind of levels, I really do think you're going to look back in a year and you're going to be kicking yourself. Take a good look at any of the big, well-known financial stocks, and I still predict my perennial favorites are the insurance companies. They've just been stalwarts through this entire thing. But again, financials are where I think people should be putting their money.
All right, terrific, Ken. Well, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon. Looking forward to speaking with you on Winning with WINANS tonight at 6 right here in 790 KABC. We'll cover all the bases, look back over the past week, and look ahead to this week, and have a chance to talk to Ken WINANS about all sorts of things, including more about crypto. And Ken, by the way, is also a wine aficionado, so it'll be wine o'clock here before you know it, Ken, so we'll be looking forward to speaking with you about that as well. Ken WINANS, top-ranked money manager with Winans Investments, winansinvestments.com, also a market historian. He's the author of several books, including Investment Atlas 3. That's his latest. Also a Forbes magazine contributor. And most importantly, host of Winning with Winans, heard every Monday night at 6 right here on 790 KBC. Ken, looking forward to speaking with you then. Thank you very much for taking the call today.
Thank you, Frank. Take care now.
Thanks very much. And out to the freeways we go on 790 KBC. Frank Mottek here. Want to take a moment to talk about owing taxes and my trusted friends, Ultimate Tax Group. If you owe back taxes or have unfiled returns, the IRS offers Fresh Start programs. Seize this rare chance now and call Ultimate Tax Group at 888-711-4850 and see why they're different than other firms. They'll actually call the IRS with you on the phone to gather your current account information. We'll also go above and beyond that to request the IRS grant you immediate protection from collections actions like bank levies and wage garnishments. Other companies charge $500 to $1,000 for this service, but Ultimate Tax Group won't. A-plus rated 5-star service with direct access to ownership and upper management. While they work on your case, just tell them Mottek sent you. Call Ultimate Tax Group now. They are the best. 888-711-4850. Again, that's 888-711-4850. They care and fight for their clients. Mottek On Money continues 790 KBC. Good afternoon. Big day for stocks to kick off the new week. Stocks moving sharply higher. Trade tensions easing after the U.S. and China agreed to cut tariffs on one another, at least temporarily, for 90 days. Under the trade deal, the U.S. will cut tariffs on Chinese products from 145% to 30%, while China will reduce tariffs on the U.S. from 125% to 10% for a 90-day period. Wall Street cheered with the Dow closing higher by 1,161 points, settling at 42,410. The S&P 500 up 184 at 5,844, and the Nasdaq popped 779 points at 18,708. The yield on the 10-year note is back up to 4.47%. The price of gold tumbling today, right now hovering at around $3,240 and change. Oil moving higher right now at $61.97 a barrel. Among the winners today, Tesla shares moved up more than $20 at $318. Nvidia stock up more than $6 at $123 and change. Coinbase, which will soon be on the S&P 500 as of next Monday, closed higher by nearly $8 at $207 and change, and has popped another 9.5%, up about $20 now at $226 and change. And now the latest news on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KABC. California in the spotlight. Today we heard from Governor Newsom looking to take down encampments, homeless encampments, announcing a new crackdown on homeless encampments here in California after his administration spent years shelling out billions of dollars in government money in an effort to address the state's worsening homeless crisis. New polling, meanwhile, suggesting Newsom is more interested in running for president than running California. New polling underscores rising public disillusionment with California's leadership overall, suggesting the governor's national ambitions could cost him dearly back home. And joining us now is veteran PR and media expert Michael Levine, who's represented some of the biggest stars in the world over many, many years, author of numerous books, now Newsmax contributor and longtime contributor to this program. Michael Levine, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Well, thank you for sharing your valuable audience with me, Frank. It's always an honor.
Wonderful to speak with you, Michael, and give us your reaction to this latest poll showing basically Californians say Governor Newsom cares more about Iowa than Inglewood. That's the headline.
It sure is, Frank. And look, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. The majority of California voters think that Gavin Newsom is devoting more of his attention to running for president than governing the state. And that's a matter of fact. That's a poll taken by UC Berkeley Institute of Governmental Studies. So, why is that true? Well, it's true because you can't fool your lying eyes. People are clear that this state is in real need of full-time leadership, and it's got a part-time governor with a great hairstyle who seems much, much more interested in podcasts and running for president and being part of the national conversation than fixing his deeply decayed state. And that's just a fact.
And right after this poll came out, now we have this announcement finally cracking down on homeless encampments, which, of course, when he had that famous debate, about a year or so ago with the Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, homelessness came up in a very big way, and probably didn't make Newsom look too good across the country when DeSantis pulled out that map in San Francisco showing where people relieve themselves there.
Well, it's really, I don't know whether to laugh or cry when I heard about Governor Newsom's statement about homelessness today and banning encampments. A bright 10-year-old should be able to figure out 10 years ago that you cannot allow people to endlessly encamp on the streets, schools, parks of your state and retain a sane civilization. It's terrible both for the citizens at large and for the people who are doing it. And yet, day after day, week after week, month after month, for years, the governor and his Democratic supermajority did nothing except throw money, your money, our money, my money, every listener's money, more and more and more money at the problem. Not only didn't solve the problem, actually made it worse. And now, 10 years later, to say, hey, I have an idea. I think we should ban encampments. Well, Governor, thank you. You're 10 years late, but thank you. Lives lost, communities ruined, because it took you 10 years to figure out what a bright 10-year-old should have figured out in 3 minutes.
And certainly a lot of fires being blamed on the homeless encampments here. A lot of fire calls, as we've learned following this horrific disaster here, are mostly homeless encampments nowadays. And coming
Very
off this
often.
horrific fire disaster, obviously that's another debacle that continues to unfold with a lot of criticism on leadership locally as well as statewide. You were around for the Northridge earthquake, and I remember when Mayor Reardon was here, and remember the state OES guy was on the air all the time talking about the recovery in a very aggressive manner. They were able to rebuild the freeways and so forth. I don't sense that this time around, do you?
No, I don't. No, sir, I don't. I sense that politicians, particularly ones in California, are much more interested in giving poetic, pandering, poetic speeches that mean exactly nothing than fixing problems. Again, if we asked a kindergarten class in Los Angeles, do you think it's a good idea to let people encamp on the streets of Los Angeles, San Francisco? Do you think that's a good idea? The kindergarten class would say, are you crazy? What's wrong with you? Those are 5-year-olds that would have figured this out. And yet it took the governor 10 years or more to simply state the obvious. Am I happy he did it? Of course. Is it far too late? Absolutely. It's embarrassing.
All right, that poll you mentioned says the overwhelming perception is that Newsom is gearing up for a 2028 White House bid. Do you think he's going to do that?
No. Look, prophecy is dubious business, particularly in politics. But Do I think that every fiber of this man's being is dedicated to becoming a presidential candidate? I do. Could that change? Of course it could change. Anything can change. And do I think that running around the country saying that you're the governor of California is a positive thing if you want to be elected in America in the early part of the 21st century? No, I don't. California is, listen, Frank, it pains me to say this. California is a laughing stock to the other 49 states. I talk to people in all parts of this country, including liberal areas of New York and New Jersey, and California is a laughing stock, with great weather. Everyone acknowledges you have the best weather, but the civilization is utterly unsustainable.
I'm Paula Pan. I help people make the smartest money decisions possible because, let's face it, money's too important to wing it.
What you'll hear is a couple money geeks sitting and talking about this stuff that we're so passionate about.
You name it, anything that's on your mind. Retirement, debt, student loans, saving for college.
It's a personal finance journey. It is a wide-ranging squirrel conversation about the topic of personal finance and good financial planning. Super fun.
Afford anything. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
We're still deciding whether to laugh or cry after this conversation. Michael, we'll figure it out and look forward to.
I think there's good reasons for both, actually.
There is. You're giving us a lot to think about, as always. Michael, thank you very much for coming to the line. That is Michael Levine, veteran PR and media expert, based right here in the Los Angeles area, who's represented some of the biggest stars in the world. When I first got here, he was standing there with, the biggest names for sure. And nowadays, I catch him on Newsmax, also now Newsmax contributor, longtime contributor to this program, author of numerous books. Michael Levine, thanks again for joining us here at Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Frank Mottek here. Want to take a moment to talk about owing taxes and my trusted friends, Ultimate Tax Group. If you owe back taxes or have unfiled returns, the IRS offers Fresh Start programs. Now seize this rare chance now and call Ultimate Tax Group at 888-711-4850 and see why they are different than other firms. They will actually call the IRS with you on the phone to gather your current account information, but will also go above and beyond. Request the IRS grant you immediate protection from collections actions like bank levies and wage garnishments. Other companies charge $500 to $1,000 for this service, but Ultimate Tax Group won't. A-plus rated 5-star service with direct access to ownership and upper management while they work on your case. Just tell them Mottek sent you. Call now, Ultimate Tax Group. They are the best. 888-711-4850. Again, that's 888-711-4850. They care and they fight for their clients. Mottek On Money continues, 790 KBC. Have you noticed AI trying to get integrated in just about everything you do? If you go on social media, Facebook, whatever, all of a sudden you got all these AI choices staring you in the face, and it's happening everywhere you look. It looks like a lot of tech companies are now racing to integrate AI into just about everything and selling it as a transformational moment. Would you pay for all of this AI extra help? Let's bring in Jason HINER now, who's editor-in-chief of ZDNet. Jason, thanks for taking the call here. You've taken a close look at this and whether people would pay for AI tools that are pretty much everywhere nowadays. Great to have you with us. Give us your view of what's happening on the AI front here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here. So ZDNet and Aberdeen Research, our partners, we did ran a survey recently asking about the ways that U.S. adults were using AI and their opinions about AI. And just as you said, we did this because there's this narrative out there, from the tech companies that, AI is everywhere, that it's the next big thing, and that there are a lot of benefits to be gained by it. And there are a lot of great things, and we could talk about those. But what we found in our research was that there's a big disconnect between the story that tech companies are telling about AI and the reality of what most U.S. adults actually want. What we found was, especially when it came to paying for these features, only 8% of Americans would be willing to pay extra for AI. So that was very surprising. And then we also found that 64% say that they would not use it. So almost 2/3 that they would not use it, that they would turn it off if possible, and that they'd stop using a product that had the feature. So that's a big enthusiasm gap between the story that tech companies are telling and what most U.S. adults think about AI features today.
What are your impressions? Like I mentioned, if you go on any social media, you got if you look at a story about red balloons or whatever, then, learn more about red balloons here, or, it's kind of overload, right?
Yeah. So there's a lot of capabilities that these, people like us at ZDNet, we test these features, we write about them, we share tips about using them. So we generally are sharing that there are a lot of good things that you can do. It can translate from languages, it can search texts and give you summaries of 50-page documents. They can be pretty helpful. There are a lot of things that it can do, but most people don't really understand all of that yet, and are a little bit overwhelmed by the capabilities. And it's being, as you said, it's being sort of shoved down their throats a little bit, to the point that the people aren't sure what to do with it and really aren't sure how it helps them.
All right, and already we're seeing this shift, I think, just being out and about. Instead of Googling something, now people are chat GPTing it. Is that what you're hearing as well?
We are. So I think it's still a small number of people that are seeing that, and that are using that. But it is a realistic number. I mean, there is over 100 million people that have at least tried it, and there is a way in which these features like ChatGPT and Google AI Overview. So sometimes you search something on Google and it just gives you what it calls an AI Overview answer. So where it tries to sum it up, which is essentially its answer to ChatGPT. And in many ways, that search is better, because a lot of times you ask a question, you just want an answer to your question. Whereas when you get Google, particularly in Google, you would typically get a list of links, to help you find what you're looking for. And so in some ways, this chat bot is better. And I think a lot of consumers will more and more move to that. And in our survey, in our study, we found that was the most used thing, and the thing that people had the most enthusiasm for was using AI to ask questions. So that's the best understood and the highest rated thing that people would like to use these AI features for. I think one other thing, if I can read between the lines a little bit, I would say I think some of the reason that people are negative on some of these features, or at least not enthusiastic yet, is there's still some mistrust out there, right? So these AI features need to know a lot about you in some cases, to give you good information. And I think that because of what we've seen with the ways that companies like Google and Facebook have used people's data to market to them, I think people are wary of providing their too much of their information and too much about themselves to some of these services. And so that's a big gap that these companies are going to need to overcome as they think about AI, because it's going to need, data on you in order to answer your questions and meet your needs really well. And that's something people are balking at, and probably there's work to be done there for the tech companies to convince them.
All right, we just have about a minute left, but since you're at the front line of all this, what's wowed you lately on the AI front? What's the most spectacular thing that you've seen related to AI lately?
Yeah, this concept of being able to translate from almost any language, even obscure language. I was asking it to translate something from Farsi recently, and I thought, it's not going to be able to do that. This was ChatGPT, and it did. And not only it translated it really well, I even asked it to translate in a certain style, and it did that. That was pretty amazing. There's a new feature called Deep Research, where it might take anywhere from 5 minutes to 30 minutes to answer a really hard question, and essentially it'll give you like a one-page report on something. You can ask it, it will go and do that. So ChatGPT does that, Google does it, Anthropic will do it as well, Claude, that's their chatbot. So those things are pretty impressive, and there's a lot more of this coming. So I think one thing I would encourage people to think about, although our survey is highlighting the fact that, look, these tech companies have a lot to do to convince people that these features are good and are worth using.
That's great. Well, Jason, thank you very much. I think the Ed Sheeran song Azizam might have inspired you, which is Farsi. Make sure you Google it up or chat GPT that as well. Jason Hiner, editor-in-chief of ZDNet. Check out the survey there at zdnet.com. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz, followed at 6 by Winning with Winans here on 790 KBC.
Former MLB All-Star Sean Casey, a.k.a. The Mayor, keeps hitting it out of the park.
I don't need to hear anything from anybody. There's too much riding on my mind being locked in. Play offense, not defense. If you play hard and you play the game right, nobody really gets on you. They're going to boo you here and there, but if you show them that you care and that you're playing hard, that's what you need to do. Just play the game one way. You hit a ball in the gap, run. Boom, coming in hot.
The Mayor's Office with Sean Casey from Believe.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.